Hi everyone, this is Paul Fouché, Chief Investment Officer at New Road Capital, just giving you your May market update. Equity markets looking fairly good on the global scale in May, and then on the local side, fairly flat for the month. So if you look at the local all share, down about 0.3%, so fairly flat. But if you look at developed market equities, up 4.6%, and then emerging market equities up about 9.7% for the month. So a nice recovery month. We had some volatility through March, but April and May definitely looking very strong and leading into our bullish thesis. So the bull market continuing to run. If we look at US inflation, so obviously came up to 3.8%. So core still at 2.8. But headline inflation, which includes energy and food, up at 3.8, and that's really as a result of the oil price. So you've seen this inflation spike or this inflation run up, but as I've said before, this is related to a supply shock in oil, and you've already seen oil start to turn. So oil actually throughout the last at points last month back below $90 a barrel. If you remember, its intraday high in March was about $120 a barrel. So definitely coming off, and oil moving through the system, and supply chains definitely changing there. So adapting there. So, we think that you will see oil start to come off, and that will be deflationary again. So you've seen let's call it an increase in prices, which has led to an inflation print that's higher, but we think that'll roll through and those base effects will actually become deflationary. So something we're watching, but, important to remember, it's not a result of an overheating economy. It's a supply side shock to the system that's created that number. So inflation up at 3.8 in the US. If we look at food and energy prices, so obviously raised since last year, but we understand why. And you've already seen, as I've mentioned, oil coming down back to around $90 a barrel. If we look at South African inflation, so also core inflation sitting at 3.6, and then headline inflation up at 4%. So still, fairly not up at the 5, 6, 7, 8%, but definitely higher than it was, and above the target that the Reserve Bank is running, which is around 3% inflation. So you did see the 25 basis point raise that the Reserve Bank did on the interest rate raise that they did towards the end of May. That's in South Africa. Now we'll wait to see what happens in the rest of the world. But we think central banks hopefully will be a little bit slower to raise too quickly, understanding that this is an oil price shock and not due to an overheating economy. So adjusting demand side metrics like interest rates is actually not going to have too much of an impact on that number. We've just got to let the supply side roll through and let that oil price start to come down. But anyway, so it's something we're watching, but still you can see the market is already looking through it, and the market being phenomenally strong during the month of May. If we look at the Rand dollar, so Rand very strong against the dollar, again, as part of that risk on trade. So we're looking, the Rand started at about 1680, started the month at about 1680, and ended the month at 1623. So very, very strong Rand for the month. If we look at the bond spread, SA-US bond spread as well, that came down, and that was on the back of very strong bond returns in South Africa. So the ALB, again, up almost 3%, up 2.91%, but still looking very attractive. And, I've spoken about South African bonds for a while. We still think they're attractive. We still like them, and still yielding very good yields, and then also capital pickup as well. And that's what you saw in the month of May. So very, very nice month for South African bonds, and yields still looking very attractive. You're still getting, north of 9% on the long end of the yield curve in South Africa. If we look at the G7, fairly flat. So the bond market fairly flat for the month. And then if we look at long-term US treasuries, fairly strong. So they were up 0.5% for the month. So again, all in all, a very strong month for equities and bonds in general. South African equities a little bit more flat, but anyway, that's suited our portfolio construction. We do like offshore, and offshore done phenomenally well. So if you look at our fund performance through the month, most of our funds sitting in the top 3 to 5%, sitting in the top 3 to 5 in terms of rankings, in terms of where they sit in their CISA categories. So very good month for New Road. Very happy. We continue to be bullish. We're watching the inflation numbers, but as I say, I think they're going to be temporary. As that oil price comes down, you'll see that being deflationary in the numbers, and then just watching what the central banks do on the back of that. So already a raise here. We'll wait to see what happens everywhere else, but the market clearly looking through that and still looking at the sort of underpinning sort of more structural elements of the economy that are still very strong. So that's it from my side. If you need anything, don't hesitate to contact me or the team. Otherwise, I'll chat to you in July for your June update. Have a good month. All the best. Bye.